Catalyst can have a quality of being highly intuitive. See something before it happens, read a room within seconds, feel, an idea, and I can feel it. I can feel the idea. I can feel it coming to life, or I can feel this needs to be pushed a little bit further to the point where, it's really uncomfortable. That's how you know when you're hitting a good idea, is when you hit that level of discomfort.
I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to catalyzing innate change makers to accelerate positive change around the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, where we highlight catalysts that are creating amazing change in the world. In that vein, I am delighted to spend time today with Jacci Johnson, not only a close personal friend, but also, lucky for us, one of the powerful, amazing, transformational coaches that we have here at Catalyst Constellations working with us. Jacci is an ICF certified PCC, which is a nice high level leadership coach and consultant who's committed to helping leaders find their true joy in meaning in the work while driving to the outcomes they desire. She has over 20 years of experience as a leader and coach in the creative and marketing industry, and she's leveraged her gifts as a catalyst to quickly change and adapt on the daily. She's passionate and experienced in building deep and trusting relationships at work, which we're going to hear about today, and helping organizations create incubators for creativity and innovation while having fun along the way. Thank you so much for being here with me, Jacci.
Thank you, Tracy. It's a pleasure to be here today.
As we get started, I'd love to hear, how do you relate to the term catalyst?
Oh, I'm a catalyst, as you know. I just have a desire to make things better for everybody. I've always been that way. And admittedly, I'm addicted to growth. I'm addicted to creating. And as soon as I think, oh, I've grown this much and I'm good, or I've created this much, I'm good, I've always got more to do. So a passion for creating. And in fact, I can get ahead of myself. I think that might be a catalyst quality, is getting ahead of yourself, maybe saying yes to a lot of things because everything feels really exciting and there's so much passion. So really learning how to channel that in really productive ways where we can make big impacts.
You're already giving us some best practices before we even dive in. So thank you for that. So let's bridge into, we'd love to hear, what is it that you're catalyzing these days?
Yeah, so I work with leaders and teams. So I do coach individual leaders and teams, and I do coach catalysts specifically as well. And really looking to create incubators for innovation and places where inclusivity is just is. It's a human right, and it just is. I've spent, as you mentioned in my bio, I spent the last 20 whatever years, 20 and some change years in marketing and creative agencies. And so, I've been trained and I've been programmed to constantly push the edge on ideas, on creativity, and allow there to be a healthy environment where creativity can thrive, which has to be a loving, supportive environment and where we are challenging the status quo. So, really working with leaders on how do we create more psychologically safe environments where we can be more creative. And when I think of creativity, intuition comes into play here. I know catalysts can have a quality of being highly intuitive, perhaps more than the average bear. And I certainly fall in that camp. So the ability to use all of my senses, see something before it happens, read a room within seconds, feel, an idea, and I can feel it. I can feel the idea. I can feel it coming to life, or I can feel, this needs to be pushed a little bit further, to the point where, it's really uncomfortable. And I feel like that's how you know when you're hitting a good idea, is when you hit that level of discomfort. Yeah.
I have so many questions within that amazing intro to your work. Thank you. The first is, you talk about building environments that are going to be right for innovation and creativity, and specifically called out the need to have kindness, the need to have safety. And I'm wondering, in your experience, what is the relationship between successfully innovative and creative teams and kindness and safety? How do those come together?
Yeah, so I'm certified in the 4 stages of psychological safety. And so I think, I love to use that framework as a way to explain, because I wish I had that framework when I was in leadership and leading teams. And now that I'm, full-time coaching and looking in hindsight, I was like, man, I wish I had this language to use while I was in it. But now looking back, so there's 4 stages. There's inclusion safety, learner safety, there's contributor safety, and then challenger safety. And so, that sense of belonging and just being included as a human being, not because you're doing anything, but just because you are, because it's a human right. That's inclusion safety. There's your kindness, there's your respect for one another. Mm-hmm. That sense of belonging. And then in learner safety, it's really about, how are we expanding our capabilities? How are we continuing to learn and grow? And the exchange there is, hey, I'm going to show up and learn and grow in the exchange for engagement. And then in contributor safety, it's about is the work I'm doing feeling valued? Do I feel valued? Do I feel like my contributions are valued? And that what I'm doing every day and how I'm spending my life every day is actually being valued and making a difference. And then finally, in challenger safety, it's really about challenging the status quo. And in that, there's always going to be tension and conflict when you're challenging the status quo. There's going to be connections that haven't been made before. It's going to bring discomfort up, tension. It might bring up conflict around other agendas that it pushes up against. But where we have the kindness piece, the support, the collaboration piece is really around how can we partner? How can we give each other air cover when we are going in to challenge ideas, when we are going in to challenge things that have been going on for a long time that a lot of people are just used to? And we don't even know we're used to it. We're just so used to it, it doesn't come up, right? Yeah. So, catalysts are really, if there's, all the catalysts who are listening now, I can't imagine that there's one who isn't used to challenging the status quo. And you may be doing it in an environment that feels safe and you have air coverage, but you also might be challenging whether you feel safe or not. Which is, courage and strength and determination and all those other things. Mm-hmm. We don't have to do it that way, though. We can ask for air coverage, allies, support, and challenge in a way that is respectful, strategic, kind.
What's the difference? And I'm assuming there may be output differences, but you tell me, right? What is the difference in an environment that has these 4 levels of safety versus creative and I would say environments trying to be creative and innovative that don't have these levels of safety?
Yeah, so great question, Tracy, because in terms of what I've learned in terms of, learning about this model created by Leader Factor and going through those 4 stages, is that, it's really about all organizations have some level, like you can vary in your levels at each stage. So you could be in one meeting and experience inclusion safety and then go in the next meeting and not feel inclusion safety. So it can vary. And so, really the difference that I personally have experienced now looking back, I can just share a personal experience of when I was in what I felt like was in an unsafe environment to a safe environment, or vice versa, if that would help.
Yeah.
So I worked in an environment for a really long time where I felt psychologically safe. I did not have the language at that time to be able to express that, but I stayed there for years and years and years and was incredibly dedicated as a catalyst in the company. So I was celebrated for being a catalyst, even though, again, we didn't use that language. I was celebrated for pushing against things. I was given air coverage. I had support. It was an environment where creativity was thriving, and it wasn't only thriving, it was my job to make sure that it was thriving. So anything we needed to do to make sure that the employees, the team, the work, the clients, everyone involved, everything was about how do we make it better? So I felt like I could really thrive in that environment, super happy, a lot of award-winning work, happy long-term retained clients. So that's an example of what I would describe felt like a really a highly psychologically safe environment for me. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, that same company, had gone through some changes, shifts in leadership, shifts in offices, and shifts in how we operated. Things changed quite a bit. As you know, and as many on this call know, things like big company shifts, like acquisitions, mergers, major org changes, all of that can bring up fear. Yeah. And it can really rustle a lot of things up. So this is just a natural process that happens. But how we navigate through that is a personal choice. And, now looking back, I think going through that time, I felt incredibly unsafe a lot of that time. And I continued to challenge. I continued to call things out, again, leaning into my intuition and feeling my way through a lot of it. I felt incredibly unsafe in many moments there. And what I noticed was that I started getting left out of meetings. Decisions were being made behind my back or without me. Responsibilities started to be slowly taken away. It just felt very unsafe. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there was also a lot of beautiful, wonderful experiences that came out of that time. But I'm answering the question around what felt like psychologically safe and not. And I had the same behavior in both environments. Yeah. Yet celebrated in one, and really what kind of felt like punishment in the other one. Yeah.
And I also, heard in that first scenario, there were awards for amazing work in creativity and client work. There was high retention, I'm guessing, beyond you. There was a sense of camaraderie in the team into fear.
Yes.
Right? I'm guessing creativity is being diminished as that fear comes in. Clearly you were unhappy, and I don't know if it actually led to you leaving, but I'm guessing retention became an issue at this period. Thank you. That's super helpful.
Mhm.
As we wrap up this part, I'd love to know, what are some of the challenges that you face in helping the leaders and teams that you work with to
Mhm.
really create these environments where creativity and innovation can thrive?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is that, people, I think that some people believe that psychological safety is a term that is just a trend, or it's the latest thing, or it's about culture of niceness. And I just want to be the myth buster here on that whole thing, because it's actually not about being too nice. It's about conflict, but
Mm,
it's about how to have healthy, productive conflict. It's about leadership. It's
yeah.
about showing up and saying, I've got your back. Let's challenge this in a strategic, thoughtful way, and have these difficult conversations. What do we need to do to prepare? Because we have to evolve. We have to innovate. When I was working in agencies, if we weren't creative, if we weren't bringing the best ideas forward, if we weren't innovating, we were going to lose our clients.
Yeah.
So our business depended on it. And I know there really isn't a business that doesn't depend on innovation. If you don't innovate, eventually you become irrelevant.
Yeah.
So it's super important. And it's not about coddling. It's about listening, respect. It's about celebration of others' contributions, and just being able to talk about the things that we don't want to talk about, sitting in that discomfort and knowing that if things are uncomfortable, that's a sign of growth, and keep going.
That's an amazing summary. As we land this, I'd love to invite you to kind of bring back in that notion of intuition. What does it look like to be working with leaders? That's not even the right question I want to ask. It's like, what's the role that intuition can play for leaders if they are committed to creating a safe culture for conflict?
Yeah. Well, in my experience, I think the most afraid I ever was when I didn't lean into my intuition, or I wasn't trusting it, when I would try to override it. I was a lot more successful when I leaned into it, when I activated it, when I navigated from that place of intuition. If you have a sense that something is coming, it's probably coming. Mm-hmm. Don't talk yourself out of it. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I think a lot of years I've spent feeling like the work environment or the corporate environment doesn't allow for intuition to live there. It's not really celebrated. And so I really hid that part of myself, I think, more than I've needed to in some cases. But it's a superpower. It's an absolute superpower. And so, yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm so sorry.
You're good.
It brings me back to the scenario, in the moment that you lived through when it wasn't feeling safe. And I just imagine, and I have this deep wish for the listeners, that when you find yourself in an environment where you stop trusting your intuition because someone else is telling you it's wrong.
Yes.
Get out.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. It's a huge flag. It's a huge flag of I agree, Tracy. I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was so spot on and so helpful. So I'm going to transition us into our rapid fire questions.
Okay.
The first one is really a bounce from where we were. If you, in a couple minutes could give nuggets of advice to catalysts out there, said another way, your 20-year-old self is here with us. What advice are you going to give her?
Yeah, I would tell her, lean way into that intuition, celebrate it, it, that's the way that if you have that as your superpower, do not be afraid to use it.
Yeah. I'm so with you.
Also just go within. When there's stuff going on around you, when there's a person who really triggers you, or there's a lesson that keeps coming up in your face, the easy thing to do is to point the finger and go into blame, shame, and judgment of the other. But what I've found is more effective is, okay, I might do that for a moment, or can I shorten that time? And can I go within and find that piece of myself that is being disrupted, because there's something in there for me. So making peace with yourself is the priority.
It's so interesting. It's, being in quiet and being able to hear those things is not necessarily a natural state for most catalysts. We can be so external, we can be so driven to our outcome. And yet certainly as we watch catalysts get more confident and calm in themselves, that's exactly the journey. So thank you for putting such a beautiful set of language to that. What advice do you have for senior leaders, for executives in finding and leveraging their catalysts in organizational contexts?
Yeah, I don't know if I have any amazing insights on how to find. Maybe ideas are coming to you as you're listening to this that are like, hey, that intuition piece. You notice somebody really has a sense for that. Not to be something that is dismissed, but something to really lean into, right? But I would say that, as a catalyst myself and coaching other catalysts, that we need autonomy with guidance. Autonomy is huge. I need to feel, and I know other catalysts need to feel like we have the freedom to be ourselves and to go big. And the other thing I would say is to have their back. That air coverage when they are challenging is really important. And I would say, to make it focused, partner with your catalysts on what are the areas of the business that need to be disrupted, and focus them there. Because if you find yourself being frustrated with ideas that are irrelevant to what's the top priority, then just refocus. Work with them.
I see like a laser
redirect.
That you're pointing. Yeah.
Redirect the focus because they will disrupt the business in the areas you need them to. And if there are other areas where you're like, it's just frustrating to me to get a bunch of ideas around something that needs to stay that way right now or is not a top priority, that's all I will say. That redirection could be helpful.
And it's beautiful because I love that you ended up essentially in the beginning part of this talking about the same thing you were talking about in the 4 steps of psychological safety, right? That we need the opportunity to work on something with autonomy and direction, and to have their back, which you were talking about in psychological safety 4 steps of getting to the place of air coverage. And so I think of, for leaders, listen to the first part of what Jackie was saying about how to create environments of psychological safety. And that sounds like it is the prescription of how to support your folks, and then add the laser focus. Don't be afraid to tell them, not here, right here.
That's right. That's right. And the other thing I'll say is that when you feel a sense of discomfort, it's just, before reacting to that, it's worth sitting with that for a little bit and being like, am I uncomfortable because, like, why am I uncomfortable? Because if we're talking about big ideas and big change and pushing against the status quo, it will be uncomfortable.
That's well said. That call to the quiet for the executive as well. All right, Jackie, what's the worst part about being a catalyst?
It can be lonely. Yeah, really lonely. There are periods of time when you may feel like alone in your in your vision, or that you're so far ahead of everyone else that no one's coming along with you, or you don't feel seen, or you don't feel understood. You know, just that loneliness, those periods of loneliness, they can be really uncomfortable. But again, I'm addicted to growth, and I'm addicted to creating, and my addiction to those things is much greater than my fear of loneliness. So I just keep going.
It is to unpack another time, but it's interesting to me that you call it an addiction. Like,
Addiction.
that's interesting. All right. So what's the best part about being a catalyst?
Oh, creative, passionate, energized. I feel a zest for life, excitement about what's possible, never done. Yeah, those are the best parts.
Do those typically sit simultaneous to moments of loneliness, or are those discrete moments?
No, they can live side by side. They live sometimes in the same, not in the same moment, but in the same day, same time. They could be happening at the same time. Yeah.
That must be a nice way to balance out the loneliness, I would imagine.
Oh, for sure.
Keep you going. Anything that you would like to leave as a call to action to our listeners?
I think it just keeps coming back to going within and making peace with yourself, that you are a catalyst, and just really owning that. It's a tall order to really accept that and own it. But that's what I would say.
What makes that a tall order, do you think?
I think the acceptance part, we, as catalysts, we have high expectations, and we can be hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
So the acceptance of this is the way that we are, and this is how we thrive and navigate the world, or that it's maybe different than how a lot of other people navigate. As I just talked about, that whole being completely open and honest about how I navigate the world and business, quite frankly, through intuition, is not widely accepted in my experience. And so, to become more and more accepting of just those superpower qualities about yourself.
Yeah.
It sounds easy, but in practice is quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's such a theme in the beautiful things you're sharing, that, get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean it's wrong.
It is not wrong.
You are a gift. I am so grateful for you and our time together today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Catalyst.
And I'm so excited to continue to hear about how you are unleashing these creative and innovative environments. And please come back and talk to us more about what you're learning on how to do that.
It would be my pleasure. Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Jackie. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to accelerate positive change, go to our website at www.catalystconstellations.com. Be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out. And if you have other catalysts in your life, be sure to hit the share button and send a link their way. Thanks again.